CG, Lil Hank, one of Pooh Shiesty's most trusted soldiers, a dude who rapped alongside him on Shiesty season, a dude who built with the Chopper Gang from the ground floor, was just caught on camera in prison, flexing a shank and kicking it with EBG Rich, Pooh Shiesty's top op, the same EBG gang that's been at war with Chopper Gang for years, the same EBG gang that dissed Pooh's dead brother, the same EBG gang that sent shots literally and figuratively at everything Pooh Shiesty built. And this man, Lil Hank, smiling, flexing, comfortable, like the beef was never real. Y'all need to hear this, because this ain't just internet gossip. This is about loyalty, about what these Memphis streets actually mean, and about whether the guys around Pooh Shiesty were ever really built the way they claim to be. Let me break it all the way down for you, gang. And trust me, it gets way crazier than you think. Before we get into what Lil Hank just did, we need to understand exactly what Pooh Shiesty built and what that EBG beef actually meant to him on a personal level. Because if you don't understand the foundation, you won't truly understand why this situation hits different. Pooh Shiesty, born Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr. on November 8, 1999, is from South Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most dangerous cities per capita in the entire United States, fam. This ain't a city where street politics are for show. This is a city where the politics are a matter of life and death, no cap. Homicide rates up there with Chicago. People moving with assault weapons like it's normal. The gangs are real, the blocks are real, and the consequences are permanent. Now, Pooh Shiesty didn't come up soft. He grew up in the Cane Creek Apartments in South Memphis alongside his childhood friend and fellow rapper Big 30. From an early age, this man was tapped into the streets. His father was literally a rapper himself, went by Mob Boss and had his own label called Mob Ties Records. So music was in his blood, but so was that Memphis energy. Hard, authentic, no filter. While he was still in high school, Pooh linked up with a crew of homies and founded Chopper Gang. Not just a rap group, a collective, a brotherhood, a ride-or-die unit. And the people in that circle mattered. They were supposed to be his real ones, his day ones. Among those names, Lil Hank and Chopper Wop. These weren't just features on a song. These were the people who built Chopper Gang with Pooh from the early days when nobody knew who any of them were. Pooh Shiesty sharpened his skills freestyling in the school lunchroom, on the block, wherever he could get a cipher going. In 2019, he started dropping music independently. Hell Night, Chopper Talk, Day One, all with Big 30, the brother he grew up with. Then in 2020, the game changed forever. Hip-hop legend Gucci Mane slid in Pooh's DMs on Instagram. "I'm listening to your stuff. You're hard. Are you signed?" Pooh told him he was running solo, and just like that, Gucci signed him to 1017 Records in a joint venture with Atlantic Records. From there, everything accelerated. He dropped Monday to Sunday with Lil Baby and Big 30. He collabed with Gucci. He featured on projects that were moving numbers. Then came November 2020, the release of Back in Blood with Lil Durk. That song peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, went platinum within 4 months, and put Pooh Shiesty in a completely different stratosphere. The man was 20 years old and running the culture. In February 2021, he dropped Shiesty Season, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, hit number 1 on top rap albums. Features from Lil Durk, Gucci Mane, Big 30, 21 Savage, and yes, Lil Hank and Chopper Wop too. The song was called Big 13 Gang. Lil Hank was on that tape. Lil Hank was part of the brand. Lil Hank was eating off Pooh Shiesty's table gang. So when I tell you what Lil Hank just did is a problem, I need you to fully understand the history. This man wasn't a random associate. He was a core piece of the circle. Now here's where it gets crazy. To understand the weight of Lil Hank being seen with EBG Rich, you have to understand what EBG is and what that beef meant to Pooh Shiesty at a deeply personal level. EBG stands for Bezel Gang, also called East Side Bezel Gang. They're from North Memphis. Pooh Shiesty and his Chopper Gang are South Memphis. Now in Memphis gang politics, where you're from matters a lot. North Memphis and South Memphis have very different energy, very different alliances, and very different histories. But here's the wild part that most people overlook. Pooh Shiesty and EBG weren't always enemies. Both Pooh and EBG Jizzle, one of the main EBG figures, attended Central High School in Memphis. They knew each other before any of this rap stuff took off. So how did it go from schoolmates to one of the deadliest Memphis rap beefs of recent memory? Let me break it down for y'all. It started with Back in Blood. When Pooh Shiesty dropped that song with Lil Durk, The streets in Memphis immediately clocked certain lyrics as direct shots at EBG, specifically the chorus line, talking about someone knowing who took something from them, telling them to come get it back in blood, was widely understood to be a reference to an alleged robbery. According to EBG Jizzle in interviews, Pooh Shiesty and his team allegedly broke into one of their spots and stole weapons. Pooh was rapping about it like it was a major op move. EBG Jizzle's version, he said it wasn't even that serious. Nothing crucial was taken, nobody was home, but Pooh rapped it like a war trophy. EBG Jizzle responded with a diss over the Back in Blood instrumental. And just like that, the rap beef became a full-blown street war. Music was just the language they were using to communicate the real-life smoke. But here's what really happened that took this whole thing from beef to personal. And this is the part a lot of people gloss over because it's heavy. EBG Jizzle, in his diss response, went after Pooh Shiesty's deceased brother. He rapped allegations that Pooh's brother, who had passed away, was a snitch. He claimed that snitching runs in the blood. Fam, that's not rap beef anymore. That's a violation of the highest order. You do not go after a man's dead family in Memphis or anywhere and expect that to be treated like regular back and forth. That crossed every line there is. When EBG Jizzle was reportedly shot and allegedly paralyzed shortly after that diss dropped, Pooh Shiesty did not stay quiet. He got on Instagram stories and celebrated. He wrote things like, "Damn that pussy diss, now he can't even walk," with laughing emojis. He taunted EBG, asked them where they disappeared to. He was pouring salt in the wound publicly. Now you might have your opinions about that, but in the context of someone who just disrespected your deceased brother, that's Pooh's response, and the streets understood it, and it didn't stop there. EBG Jizzle ended up getting locked up on attempted first-degree murder charges, which he initially beat by walking on bond. This dude had caught a juvenile life sentence at 16, beat a murder case in 2020, and was still moving around like he was untouchable. The EBG situation was never resolved. The beef just went underground because both sides started catching cases. Now fast forward to when Pooh Shiesty himself went down. In October 2020, he was arrested in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, in connection with a shooting at a hotel during a weed and sneaker deal gone sideways. Surveillance footage allegedly captured the whole thing. He allegedly shot a 28-year-old man, and when he drove off in a rented McLaren, a Louis Vuitton bag with over $40,000 cash fell out of the car. Investigators traced a $100 bill from that bag back to his Instagram page.
It was a shooting in the middle of the day involving a well-known rapper, according to police. We reported this story back in October, but now we're seeing how it all went down. Bullets fly in broad daylight. 2 people shot and over $500,000 in exotic cars, all of it caught on camera. This surveillance video is from an October 9th shooting in Bay Harbor Islands, and it has a recording artist who goes by Pooh Shiesty in hot water. Unlike this clip, what happened here is no music video. The surveillance shows a McLaren sports car, Mercedes Maybach, and another Mercedes pull into this East Bay Harbor Drive condo parking lot. Guys eventually get out. The meeting about a pair of high-end sneakers for sale and some money owed. Then this. The man in the white shirt has a pistol. The man in the black sweatshirt is also pointing a weapon. Shots are fired before the gunmen take off in their fancy getaway cars. The victims telling police 20-year-old Pooh Shiesty was behind the wheel of the McLaren, and he was armed with an assault rifle. Police also using these Instagram photos as part of their case. Shiesty with an assault-style rifle and cash. Shiesty, whose real name is Lontrell Williams, was arrested a few days later. He and a member of his entourage charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon.
In April 2022, he was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to a firearm conspiracy charge, with 3 other more serious charges dropped in the deal. The most serious of those dropped charges carried a possible life sentence.
Rapper Pooh Shiesty is facing prison time after pleading guilty to a gun charge in Miami federal court. The case against Lontrell Williams Jr.
So that plea was critical. Pooh Shiesty has been behind bars since 2021, serving federal time. And while he's been in there, he's been posting up, talking his talk, calling himself the king of Memphis from behind the wall, saying he's coming home to terrorize, saying his loyalty is unmatched. He's been doing the time like a soldier. At least that's the image. But the streets been watching what's happening around him on the outside, and especially inside those walls. And that's where this CG Lil Hank situation comes in. All right, gang, here's where it gets crazy. This is the part that broke the internet. CG Lil Hank. Let me be clear about who this man is one more time. CG stands for Choppa Gang. His name literally carries Pooh Shiesty's crew in the prefix. This is a man who was on Shiesty Season, Pooh Shiesty's debut mixtape, the same project that went number 3 on the Billboard 200 and launched Pooh into superstardom. Lil Hank rapped on Big 13 Gang right alongside Pooh Shiesty and Choppa Wop. He was a verified Choppa Gang affiliate eating off the biggest table in Memphis rap. And this man Lil Hank was just spotted in prison, flexing a knife while kicking it with EBG Rich. Let me say that again for the people in the back. EBG Rich. That EBG in his name is not a coincidence, not a different EBG, not some unrelated crew. That is the same EBG Bezel Gang, the same faction that Pooh Shiesty has been at war with for years, the same side that dissed his dead brother, the same side that he publicly celebrated getting shot, the same side that represents everything Choppa Gang was supposed to be against. And Lil Hank wasn't just spotted standing near him awkwardly like some accidental prison unit assignment situation. Homeboy was flexing with a knife, chillin', looking comfortable, looking like these were his people. Looking like the beef that Pooh Shiesty built his entire Memphis legacy on meant absolutely nothing to Lil Hank behind those walls. Now the image spread across social media fast. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and the comments were immediately divided. Some people jumped to Lil Hank's defense saying things like, "It's normal for Opps to be cool in prison and you gotta survive in there, politics change when you're locked up." But I don't think so, fam, and here's why that defense doesn't hold water. There's a difference between surviving in prison and flourishing with your man's sworn enemy. There's a difference between being in the same unit as someone and posing with a shank next to them like your boys. In federal prison culture, word travels. Everybody got phones in the feds. Pooh Shiesty himself has been posting from behind bars this whole time. You think Pooh didn't see this? You think word didn't make it back to him immediately? Come on. If Lil Hank was just being cautious, just keeping the peace to avoid getting hurt, that's one conversation. Prison politics are complicated, no cap. You're in a controlled environment, you can't always control who you're near, and sometimes survival means keeping a neutral face with people you'd never rock with on the outside. Real ones who've been through the system understand that reality. But this? Flexing a knife with EBG Rich while taking photos that end up on social media? That's a statement. That's a message. That's Lil Hank saying, whether he intended it or not, that the beef Pooh Shiesty risked his life and his freedom over wasn't real to him. That's Lil Hank telling the world that Choppa Gang loyalty has a limit, and that limit is apparently the prison yard. Now here's where people started connecting the dots, and the internet went crazy when they did. Think about the timeline carefully. Pooh Shiesty is in federal prison, serving 63 months. He's been posting up, talking about loyalty, talking about real recognize real, talking about the streets needing to use him as an example of what keeping it solid looks like. He literally wrote from behind bars, "Dear streets, use me as an example of what keeping it solid and standing on wax look like. Ain't never going, ain't never went, I stamp it." That's a man who believes his circle is solid. That's a man operating on faith that his guys are holding it down the same way he is. That's a man who's been talking about coming home to terrorize, said he's got 5 to 6 albums loaded up, said he's back for revenge. He's doing the time while trusting that the people around him are maintaining the code. And then this drops. Lil Hank, Choppa Gang, kicked back with EBG Rich, posing with a blade in federal or state prison facilities, looking unbothered. And here's what nobody's really talking about, the knife. Why is that detail significant? Because Pooh Shiesty himself, in one of his prison posts, literally told Opps they were going to have to get their hand, knife, and gun game up before they could do anything with him. The knife is a symbol of power in prison culture. You don't just casually flex a shank in a photo with someone unless you're comfortable with that person on a real level. That's not a neutral interaction. That's not surviving. That's a statement of alliance. Now, people online started digging, and the question that kept coming up was, is this the first time, or is this a pattern? Because in hip-hop, when somebody from your crew gets caught slipping once, sometimes it's an isolated incident. But when you start looking at the bigger picture, who was really running with Pooh Shiesty before he got locked up? Who benefited from his come-up? Who's been active while he's been away? You start to ask harder questions. Here's the real tea. When a man goes to prison, especially federal prison for an extended bid, his circle gets tested in ways that can't be faked. Money starts moving differently. Loyalty gets stretched. People who were eating off your name start figuring out how to eat without you. Some hold it down, some don't, and some, the worst kind, start sliding toward the very people they were supposed to be against, because the politics of survival override the politics of the streets. Pooh Shiesty kept it real from day one. Even in prison, this man was bragging about ordering 2 Ferraris on a jail call. He said, "I'm locked up, not fucked up." He was doing everything in his power to show that his operation never stopped, that his loyalty never wavered, that he was the same man that walked in those doors. He shouted out Lil Baby, Lil Durk, and other real ones who wrote to him and held him down consistently. But the CG before Lil Hank's name, the Choppa gang he was supposed to be representing, that appears to mean something very different to Lil Hank than it means to Pooh Shiesty. And look, I'm not here to just clown Lil Hank for the sake of it. The streets have their own code, and prison has its own reality. There are people who will genuinely argue that in the federal system, in a controlled housing unit, you might not have control over who you're around. You might genuinely have to coexist with people you got beef with on the outside to keep from getting hurt. That argument exists, and I hear it. But it doesn't explain the photo. It doesn't explain the casual energy. It doesn't explain looking comfortable enough to flex a weapon alongside a man named EBG, because that implies trust. And trust with an op while your man is locked up and counting on his circle? That's a violation, fam, period. So how did Pooh Shiesty react to all this? What happened next shocked everyone, but maybe it shouldn't have. Word spread fast, the image circulated. Fans started tagging Pooh's pages, sending it to his people, making sure it got back. Because in 2024 and 2025, information moves at the speed of light. You cannot hide anything in this era, not from the streets and definitely not from the internet. Now here's the thing about Pooh Shiesty. He is not the type to sit on something quietly. This is a man who the moment EBG Jizzle got shot was on Instagram stories within hours celebrating. This is a man who has been firing shots at his ops from behind federal prison walls, literally posting cryptic messages, calling himself the menace of Memphis even while in the pen, telling anyone who doubted him that they had better get their knife and gun game right. He is not passive. He is not the wait and see type. So according to the streets and based on how Pooh moves historically, the word is he is done with Lil Hank. Not disappointed, not "we'll talk when I get home." Done, finished. When Pooh Shiesty cuts somebody off in his mind, that's it. And based on everything we know about how this man operates, seeing your right hand flexing with your sworn enemy in prison is a cutoff offense with zero discussion needed. Now some fans have tried to play devil's advocate. Maybe it ain't as deep as it looks. Maybe there's context we're missing. Maybe Lil Hank was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And fam, I want to be fair. I always give all angles when I break something down. Prison is complicated. Federal units mix people from all kinds of different situations and affiliations. You don't always get to choose your neighbors behind those walls, but here's what really matters: the optics. In street culture, optics are the reality in many cases, because perception drives reputation, and reputation is what keeps people safe, keeps money flowing, keeps your circle intact. If your top guy is out here looking like he's buddy-buddy with your sworn enemies while you're sitting in a federal cell preaching about loyalty and standing on solid ground, the optics destroy everything. Pooh Shiesty built his brand on being real. He built it on Memphis authenticity. He got signed to Gucci Mane's label, a man who literally invented the term real, recognize real in trap culture. And he carried that DNA through everything he did. His whole message, even from prison, has been about keeping it solid when nobody's watching, about not folding, about being the example. And then his own CG member becomes the counterexample. That's got a sting on a level that's hard to put into words, gang. You're locked up. You can't do anything about it. You're behind federal walls doing 63 months. You're trusting your circle to hold it down. And then one of the people who literally carries your gang name in their rap alias is out here kicking it with EBG, with the people who talked crazy about your dead brother. The streets know, Pooh knows, and the internet made sure the whole world knows. All right, gang, let me zoom out for a second, because this situation with Lil Hank isn't just about one dude's choices behind bars. This is actually about something much bigger in hip-hop culture, and especially in Memphis rap specifically. Here's the real tea about what we're witnessing. Memphis has always been one of the most authentic rap cities in the country. No cap. When rappers say they're from Memphis and they rep the streets, that carries a different weight than a lot of other cities. The poverty is real, the violence is documented, the gang politics have real consequences. People don't make it out of Memphis just by rapping. They make it out by surviving first. Young Dolph, Yo Gotti, Moneybag Yo, now Pooh Shiesty. These are men who came from real situations and built real careers. And the street credibility was always part of what made the music undeniable. But here's the thing, when you go from those streets to that level of fame, the people around you don't always make the same jump in mentality. The money changes, the access changes, and sometimes the people who were built for the struggle aren't built for the success or for the prison time that often follows. The crash dummies, excuse my language, the ones who were down when it was nothing, some of them don't hold up when the test actually comes. Lil Hank was supposed to be a homie, not just a feature, but being on Shiesty season didn't make him solid. That tape was the reward for being solid. And now we're finding out potentially that the reward came before the qualifications were actually verified. And this is a pattern we see across hip-hop constantly. A man rises to the top, his circle eats with him, everybody gets put on. Then the man goes down because the streets and the feds always catch up, and the circle starts fracturing. The ones who are most dependent on his energy to maintain their image start making choices that reveal who they actually were underneath it all. And the EBG angle makes this even more complicated, because here's the question nobody's really asking. Is this beef between Choppa Gang and EBG still active right now? Is Pooh Shiesty still at war with EBG in 2025? Because here's the wild part. Pooh Shiesty was released early from prison on October 6, 2025. He dropped his comeback single FDO in December 2025 and hit number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100. The man is back in the game. So if Lil Hank was out here building bridges with EBG Rich while Pooh was inside, and now Pooh is home, that's a conversation that needs to happen face to face. And those conversations in Memphis don't always go smoothly, fam. Because here's what Pooh Shiesty said before he came home. In a 2023 interview from behind bars on $1 Million Worth of Game, he said he was coming back for revenge. Word for word, I'm back for revenge for sure. Get out the way or get ran over. Get down or get put up. Y'all know how I'm coming. He said he's got 5 to 6 albums ready to go. He said nobody in the game was prepared for what he was bringing back. That is not a man coming home to make peace with people who violated the code. That is not a man who's going to see a photo of his Choppa Gang member flexing with EBG Rich and say, "It's all love, bro." No cap, Pooh Shiesty doesn't operate that way. We've seen how he handles disrespect, even when he was behind bars and couldn't do anything about it physically. When he gets home, different energy entirely. The street's been talking about this for months, gang, and the real ones already know. When Pooh said he was coming back to terrorize, he meant that across the board, not just for the Opps on the outside, but for people inside his own circle who showed their true colors while he was away. Let me address the argument that fans keep making, because it's actually worth having this real conversation, and I want to keep it 100 with y'all. The defense for Lil Hank is basically this: prison politics are different. When you're locked up, you can't always control who you're around. The beef from the outside doesn't always translate to the inside the same way, especially if you're in a federal facility where people from all different cities, all different situations are thrown together. Some people genuinely argue that it's smarter, safer even, to dead the beef in there and coexist because you're outnumbered, you're on unfamiliar ground, and surviving is the priority. And fam, real talk, there's some truth in that. Anybody who's been to jail or has people who've been in the system knows that the politics inside don't always match the politics outside. You might be at war in Memphis, but if you end up in a federal facility in Texas or Georgia or wherever, you might be navigating completely different alliances and completely different threats. Self-preservation is real, but, and this is a big but, even accepting all of that, the photo changes everything. If you're trying to survive quietly, you don't take photos. If you're trying to keep the peace without it becoming a statement, you don't flex a knife with an op for the camera. In 2024, everybody in federal prison knows that photos travel. Everybody knows their people on the outside will see it. Everybody knows social media exists. The decision to take that photo and the fact that it got out is not an accident of circumstance. It's a choice. Whether conscious or not, it's a choice. And the choice communicates something. It communicates that Lil Hank either doesn't care what Pooh Shiesty thinks or doesn't believe the consequences will reach him. And both of those things are a problem for a man who put his name on a Pooh Shiesty record and called himself Choppa Gang. Here's another layer to this that people keep overlooking. The EBG Rich specifically, not just any EBG member. EBG Rich is being identified as one of the top members of the EBG faction. This wasn't kicking it with some random dude who happened to be loosely affiliated. This was Pooh Shiesty's specific top op, the person who represents the enemy in the most concentrated form. That's like if one of Drake's top boys got caught kicking it with Kendrick Lamar's inner circle in the middle of their beef. Not just some loosely affiliated person, the actual person on the opposing side. Gang, fam, the streets don't make mistakes when it comes to identifying who's who, and the internet definitely doesn't make those mistakes in 2025. People know exactly who EBG Rich is and exactly what his position is in relation to Pooh Shiesty. So when those two are photographed together looking comfortable, there's no "it's not what it looks like." We can see what it looks like. Eyes don't lie.